Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's JD Parks and I'm here to talk to you about finding your dissertation topic. It's terrible. Stay tuned. So I actually completed my dissertation in March of this year, 2019. It was the hardest, the most difficult writing I probably have ever completed in my life. And I think because it was so structural, and I'm one of those people who kind of, is laxy daisy and kind of walks to the beat of my own drum. But with the dissertation, no, you have to follow guidelines or you just get put behind another year. And so that was really hard for me writing during that writing process. However, the most difficult thing of the whole process was finding a topic for my dissertation. There were times when I would call my mom and just boo hoo. I mean, real tears because I could not figure out what I wanted to do my dissertation on. People kept saying it's going to come to you, it's going to come to you. And I was a year in and it hadn't come. And I mean, my program was a two and a half year program. And so I just wasn't finding anything. And so finally I did. And I'm going to tell you how. Here are the 5 tips to finding your dissertation topic. The first tip, read. Read. Now, in a doctoral program, they're going to have you doing a heck load of reading anyway. But what you really want to do is focus on reading material that's really tailored to your interests. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But you want to just read different material. So one thing that I found beneficial to me was reading other people's dissertations. And so you can get on ProQuest. Sometimes you can just Google dissertations. I know I Googled dissertations in education. And when I did that, I found different people's dissertations in PDF form. And I read them. I mean, it was 100, sometimes 200 pages, and I would read them in hopes that I would get some kind of inspiration from those, from the text. And so I just read. I read. You want to read scholarly articles from your field. You also want to read other like reviews of books, so like book reviews. Entertaining pieces. So I subscribe to like the Chalkbeat newsletters, and I would get different updates on school policies and reform every morning. And so I would actually read those every morning religiously, hoping that something about or something in that text would actually spark something in me and make me really want to hone in on a particular issue. So the first step is, of course, to read. Even when you don't want to, just read anyway. And even when you have a text or something that's an assignment for your doctoral program, read it with like a second mind, not the mind of completing the assignment, but the mind of finding some type of internal problem that you can work to solve with your dissertation. The second thing that you want to do is once you find yourself developing an interest in a particular subject. So for me, I knew I wanted to deal with Black student leadership and culturally relevant pedagogy. So if you're not in the education world, that might not mean much to you. However, I knew that that was something that I was very interested in. I came into the doctoral program being very interested in Black student achievement. As I evolved in the program, that became an even greater focus for me, Black student achievement. But everyone was already focusing on Black student achievement. And so I found myself trying to leave that realm. And even for a minute, I got really focused on HBCUs, historically Black colleges, and their evolution. But then there was still Black student achievement. And so no matter how far I tried to veer to the right or veer to the left, I could not leave this subject of Black student achievement. And so once you find yourself always coming back to a topic, stick with it. Don't run from it. Don't be like me and feel like you can't contribute anything to the subject, or that, oh, this already been done, everyone has already wrote everything. That's not true. You can still add a lot to it. And so I stuck with it. So find us interest and stick with it. Don't leave it. Look for it everywhere, in every. The third thing is to attend conferences, so academic conferences. The first conference that I attended, or one of the first conferences I attended while I was enrolled in my doctoral program, was the National Council for Teachers of English. Now, no, I didn't go there with a focus in Black education at all. Like, nothing. I was going there to, for one, bring back ideas for the faculty and staff at my job, on how we can better educate students in English, how I can bring creative and innovative activity to the classroom, to my English classroom, how I can impact college level English programs. And so that was my focus in going. You go to a conference, they'll have all these different sessions, and you'll kind of have to choose the sessions based on your interest. And I flock to every single session that has something to do with Black student achievement, Black student resistance, culturally relevant pedagogy, innovative classroom practices, hip hop in the classroom. I went to every single session that I felt was relative to my personal interest. And so in each session, I was getting all these different ideas, and I was jotting down all this information, and I had no idea what to do with them. I was just jotting it down. It became so interesting to me. And I guess you could say that when I went to that conference, I was bit by the conference bug, because after that I was going to conferences left and right. That one was in Missouri. Then I ended up going to one in Richmond, Virginia, that was dealing with ethnic studies and social justice. And what do you know, Black student achievement came up over and over and over again. I actually presented at that conference. And so I ended up being like bitten by this bug that made me just want to go to all these different conferences and stuff. So you want to make sure that you attend as many academic conferences as you possibly can. It will definitely help you refine your. The next thing you want to do, and this is not really my tip, my major professor gave me this tip. He told me to converse with other professionals in the education field. So in whatever field that you're in, have deliberate and continuous conversations with people who are already in the field, or people who are entering the field just like you. And so there would be times when I would invite my professors out for coffee, and we would just sit there and talk, and we would talk about, everyday things as well. But there were times when, like, my professors would ask me questions about the education field that would make me consider a different angle of an issue that I was already interested in. So if we're talking about Black student achievement, then I would have a professor who might ask me about recidivism. So how do you feel about juvenile incarceration? And I'd be like, what? What does this have to do? Even though I knew, but it would force me to take my ideal elsewhere. So if I'm talking about Black student achievement, then now let's also discuss how student achievement somehow correlates with the incarceration rates of Black juveniles. And so it was taking my mind in all these different circles that I hadn't taken myself. So that's why it's important for you to have conversations with people who are in your field and who have the same interests as you. Because what'll happen is they'll make you consider something that you would not have considered on your own. So invite a professor, a friend, someone in your field, a coworker out for coffee. And it's realistic to think that y'all are going to have some conversations about education or your field anyway. So have some conversations with people and see how that might possibly lead you in a direction. And then my last thing, the last way to really awaken your dissertation topic is to visit a museum. So I'll tell you one thing that really impacted me and helped me to really develop my dissertation topic, and it wasn't necessarily a museum that we went to, but it was an experience that you would commonly associate with a museum. So my sister and I attended a conference, like I said before, in Richmond, Virginia, on ethnic studies. And while there, we actually went to this museum I cannot remember the name of it right now, but it was dealing with indigenous and Native American people and African American and people who have basically experienced injustice and fought against injustice towards activism. And it was like 3 floors of just complete realistic, transparent revelation of history. And so we went through the first floor, second floor, third floor. We got to this reception, and we ended up signing up for this. I don't know what to call it, but it was like a trail that you were supposed to go on, and it was like a tour of the city of Richmond. And on this tour, it was supposed to give you a historical backdrop of Richmond and how different acts of racism and prejudice and just complete gentrification, how those all fed into this huge culture of Richmond. And while on that tour, we ended up going to this bank, like this discarded and abandoned riverbank that used to be a place where they loaded slaves and exchanged slaves. And while there, the host had us link up like slaves. And while we did that, we had to hold our hands down. And here I am linked up with my sister like this in the cold, by the way, because it's like February, or yeah, it was like February. And we're linked up, and while we're walking, like, we can't move, because you know, if you're linked up, you can't move without the other person moving. So we're moving these little baby steps, and it was supposed to reflect the same hardships that the slaves had. And while we're moving, she's singing these old songs and spiritual songs that really resonated with me and broke me down into tears. And in that moment, I found myself finding my research topic for my dissertation, because I felt such resistance and I felt so helpless that I thought to myself, this must be how our students feel, black students feel in our schools. And so before you know it, it became a whole topic within itself. And at that same conference, I actually ended up getting inspiration from a presenter who did a study relatively similar, or was working on a study relatively similar to my very own idea. And so you want to make sure you visit a museum, because what happened is all these different, you get this feeling of rejuvenation, but also reminder, like you almost get this historical backdrop and these feelings of productivity and this push that you wouldn't normally get just sitting at home. By being surrounded by history, it almost forces you to do something and come up with some form of a solution. So those are my 5 tips. Make sure that you read. 2, settle on the subject. Do not change your subject, no matter how much you want to. Stick to the subject, that interest that you have. 3, attend conferences often. 4, converse with other professionals, so meet with other people that's interested in your field, who also work in your field. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you visit as many museums as possible. I promise you, if you don't get anything from that, then I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so until next time, see you, bye.